welcome to Today in Woburn. I'm your host, Samantha Stone, and today we continue our election series, the first of two mayoral candidate discussions. These discussions are a little bit longer because of the central role that the mayor plays in our city, so we have a little bit more time today, and I'm really excited and grateful that candidate Ellen Crowley has agreed to join us so we can dig in and talk about a lot of the issues that I know all of you care about, and we have important decisions to make come election day. Welcome, Ellen.
Hello, thank you for having me.
I am going to start our conversation today with perhaps the obvious, but I'm not sure we've really discussed it before. And that is, you're an incredibly effective chair of the school committee. And that's not just my opinion, it is my opinion. But it isn't just my opinion. I hear that pretty consistently from people across the city of all kinds. Scott has praised you, city councilors have praised you, residents and neighbors have praised you, your fellow committee folks have praised you. You've had a really big impact on that role. So why have you decided to run for mayor, given the success that you've had on the school committee?
Well, thank you for asking that. I think as the mayor, I will have more responsibility and more impact on the city as a whole. As chair of the school committee, I don't know if I'm this great chair of the school committee or anything, but I've developed an excellent skill set for communicating with people and promoting ideas of equity, diversity, and inclusion, and all of the great stuff that the school does. And so I just want to bring that over to the city because I do think that I will be an excellent mayor for the city.
Awesome. I appreciate that. And just sort of operationally, if you are elected mayor, what happens to your role on the school committee?
So the rest of the members appoint somebody. They vote and deliberate, and they probably, I've never seen the process, but I'm sure that they go through a pretty rigorous public process in order to find the next school committee member, and that person serves until the end of the term, end of my term.
And then is it true that every 2 years the chair function is discussed and agreed upon from the committee itself? So it's possible that somebody would come in but not necessarily be the chair of the school committee?
Oh, no. Correct. I mean, it would be odd for a new person. I assume they would be new to the position, and that they wouldn't be chair. So the school committee would vote on the chair on the same night as inauguration of the new mayor.
Okay, thank you. I figured that.
And it's every year. It's usually every year.
Okay.
I did 2 years because of COVID, so I got it for 2 years.
We're grateful for that because it has certainly been enough change. No one needed additional change on top of that. So thank you for clarifying that. I think that's just helpful context and information. And we've had city council positions who have needed to be filled probably in sort of a similar process where the committee took nominations and candidates and then made the decision and announced that. Perfect.
Yes.
So you talked about the diversity of the city, which I think is really important. We are really fortunate to live in a city that has diversity of lots of things: race and gender and religion and culture and political points of view and many, many different things that I'm not even naming, that, food preferences and, all kinds of things that I can imagine. One of the things that I think is really important, and you've mentioned, is the goal to have a very representative government. Mm-hmm. So how would you, as mayor, represent, the big, differing points of view across the city and, make sure to stay connected to how people are thinking and feeling, not just from one segment of the population, but across all of them?
So the mayor's biggest power, I think, and the authority is the power of appointment to various boards. And that is something that in the past has been used to really just appoint the same people. And so I think it's important to think about appointing people of diverse backgrounds, people with different thought processes that particularly may not necessarily be from Woburn. I mean, they have to live in Woburn, but, we really need to open up the space and have diverse ideas. It's extremely important to me to have people appointed to my boards that disagree with me, that have that I know are going to carry a diverse thought process, or people that, if you're talking about community development, I would love to have somebody on a board that went through homelessness and went through scarcity issues, rather than having people all housed safely talking about housing issues in Woburn. So I really want to hear, and I just want everybody to know that under my administration, all voices, everybody is going to be welcome in this government. And we, on the school committee, we have one little appointment power for the Recreation Commission. And we had to turn applicants away, so I think that in my position, particularly my connection to the community, I'm going to be able to pull people into city government. And I think it's just one of those things that I'm truly excited for, to just see the reflection of the community and the population in our city government. It will truly be inspiring. I think people from around the region will look at Woburn and say, wow, they're doing it there. We're really making a statement to be more diverse, to be more inclusive. And I'm just so excited for it. It's just one of those things that it gives me great pleasure to think about. Like we have so many amazing people in Woburn. To really harness that vigor and that strength and that compassion into our city boards and governments. I mean, we can move Woburn forward. We really can. And it starts with that mayor's ability to appoint people in positions of authority.
You talked about welcoming, not just being okay, but welcoming people who have different points of view from you, which I think, personally is very healthy and really hard, right? Theoretically, all of us, I think, believe we want to be informed by people who may not agree with us, because that helps us come to better decisions. It does a whole bunch of good things. But it inherently also creates some conflict, hopefully healthy, constructive conflict, but nonetheless, it's going to create some of that. How do you view the role of conflict in a city administration function like this? I mean, I know administration is probably the wrong word to use. Leadership maybe is a better word. But how do you both embrace it and also make sure that we don't get caught in a constant cycle of debate and not be able to move forward and act?
I think one of the best things about my leadership style is my ability to navigate conflict. I don't take it personally. I actually enjoy differing views, bringing people together with different voices and collaborating and really coming up with the truth. As somebody that works in an adversarial proceeding most of the time, that piece works in terms of coming up and building consensus. Conflict. I think that conflict is healthy, but you should not get dragged down to it. And I think there are ways in which we can use a skill set that navigates conflict and uses it as a source of strength, as coming up with a solution through consensus building. That's where you can go with conflict. And I noticed that Mr. Galvin tends to have conflict. It seems like there's always someone that he's conflicting with, whether it be the chief of police, and it just seems like maybe, and again, I'm not in this government, but it just seems it's a little bogged down by these issues of conflict with other department heads.
Let's talk about the one that you have been intimately involved with, the school committee, because that is something that you have been firsthand, and that is a function that interacts with the mayor, but certainly the police department, the fire, like sort of a DPW, like a whole host of functions, both internal to city operations and external resources like busing systems and special schools that we have to send some of our students to for the support that they require and things like that. Maybe talk a little bit about some of the ways that you have tried to sort of live that within the context of school committee, and maybe a couple of examples where I can think of a couple off the top of my head, but I don't want to bring up the same ones we've always talked about. So I'll let you sort of help guide this conversation a little bit.
Well, I think that the school committee, I don't want to say too much here, but the school committee has to engage in a process of collective bargaining, right? Where you have management versus labor, and it's supposed to be adversarial because it's about fairness, and it's about it's a process through which you make sure that that management is not exploiting the labor in any way. And they have this important process and this important voice to negotiate with management over working conditions. And I think under my leadership, I don't want to speak for labor in any way, but I think it's been a better environment since I've joined the team, and I'll just leave it at that. Additionally, I think that the school committee in the mayor's office generally have a great relationship, but it's natural when the school committee wants as much funding as possible for the schools, and the mayor sees his job or her job as the city as a whole, because it's part of the process and it's part of advocating. And I think under my leadership, it will be a lot smoother. And I think that there won't be any tactics used, like springing on the spending limit at the last minute and things like that. And I think that starting off with a positive collaborative relationship from the start is truly something that's definitely going to benefit Woburn, and definitely, absolutely, 100%. It's going to benefit all the children that attend the Woburn Public Schools, its staff, and the stakeholders.
Let's talk about fiscal responsibility. So the mayor's job is very tricky, right? There's this balance between fiscal responsibility and making sure that we as a city have a healthy use of funds and are safe and protected for not just now, but for things that come. But we also have areas of opportunity for investment. As you look at the city today, we'll start with sort of where are 3 areas that you would find for further investment that you think are underfunded today and should be receiving more support financially?
So I really, as a politician, I really want to answer this question and just say whatever it is my constituents, what I hear on the streets. But I have to say that without a long-term strategic plan and a needs assessment, it just doesn't make any sense for me to say, I want to build these programs because I just spoke to this constituent and she wants this. However, there are consistent themes of things that are lacking in the city. The inability of folks that use different mobility devices to walk down the street, the fact that they can't use all of our sidewalks is extremely concerning. And the lack of after-school programming that's consistent across the board raises issues of safety issues for kids, economic issues for parents. And so I see that as a multi-dimensional issue. The senior center and the way it looks and that issue, the Plimpton, the fact that it's sitting there rotting is so, it has the name school on it. So kids, of course kids are interested in an old building called a school. So I really just want to make it clear that we absolutely 100% need a needs assessment. We need to do outreach to the community. We need to talk to different stakeholders, and we need a long-term plan, because for me to say I'm just going to invest in this thing over here without doing a comprehensive needs assessment when we haven't done one in a long time, it wouldn't be good leadership. And I want to pull the community together. I want to hear from department heads. Where do you think we need to invest money in? What is it that you've been holding back for 5 years that you really want to see change? And I just can't wait to hear from people when I'm in that space of authority, when I'm in that space to help, not even an authority, just to help, just to be that vessel. of improving Woburn. I can't wait to hear what people have to say. And then we can build a plan. And then we can use we don't even need to use large amounts of money. Some of it is just not even fiscally impactful. So I have a lot of ideas, and I know that's not a very specific answer, but with not understanding basic things, like who's struggling in poverty, who is cost burdened by rent, how are our folks of advanced age doing? Without knowing those answers, I just can't come up with a plan.
So let me ask you, so I think it's safe to assume from what we've even just seen in the current open budgeting process, that there will be lots of people and lots of ways that are good and healthy things for the city that people will want to invest in.
Yes.
And the process that you will, to go through and to do a needs assessment, I want to ask you a little bit more what that process looks like in a minute. But we will have to get that money from somewhere. So will we get that money by increasing taxes under your administration? Will we get that money from bringing more commercial in? Will we get that money from, I don't know, growing money trees? How will we fund the addition, whatever those things become, those additional investments?
Well, again, if we're talking about increasing senior services at the senior center, I have no doubt that there are tons of grants available in that regard. And if we're talking about the actual needs assessment itself, I have no doubt that we'll be able to find a nonprofit, a consulting firm that will easily work with Woburn to meet the needs of our population. So I don't think it's, when I'm talking about fixing roads, I'm not talking about extra special initiatives. I'm talking about exactly what the government is supposed to be doing. I'm not talking about building a multi-million-dollar football stadium. I'm talking about making sure that a person who uses a wheelchair can walk down the street. And those are basic needs that the budget should be spent on. So the problem in Woburn, or one significant challenge that I see, is we have all this development and all this growth and all these amazing things happening, but where's the connection to the city services? Where's the connection to the city infrastructure? And why aren't we seeing an infrastructure that responds to all the new growth? And that's a hypothetical question, but it's certainly one that I want to answer. And why is it that the mayor stands up every year for his State of the City address and talks about how prosperous and how much money we have and how wealthy we are, when it seems like roads are crumbling, things aren't getting done, we don't have enough police officers? And I could talk about the schools for a little bit, but it just seems like it's not, the city's not actually helping raise the quality of life of its residents.
So when I first started to phrase that question, I, in the ways I often do, made it into a huge question and asked a lot. But I started with, sort of asking about increasing tax rate, and you shook your head violently, but I didn't really give you an opportunity to answer that, because I then asked 16 other things all at the same time. So I'm going to give you an opportunity to answer that very directly, because it's a question I think a lot of people ask. And I know you cannot have a crystal ball and see the future, but do you anticipate as mayor that you would find a need to increase tax rates for residents, or would you hope to not do that?
Well, let me be clear that the city council votes to set the tax rate. So it's not the mayor. The mayor makes a recommendation, but at the end of the day, that's a deliberation in public session. I can't foresee any need to increase the tax rate. The tax rates are increasing because housing prices are going up. So your taxes are going up, and the city's not doing it, but it's happening because housing prices are out of control. So we can actually look at ways in which we can stabilize some of the housing prices by creating more demand. excuse me, more supply and lowering the demand. So I think actually we might see a decrease of taxes under my administration. And I have to state this because it's really important that the performance of the school system, unless you are out investing millions of dollars, does not impact the tax rate. When the mayor discusses our spending limit with the school committee, we are going back and forth over like $50,000, $200,000. And that's nowhere near any limit in which we would have to use a Proposition 2.5 or anything like that. So we are often just nickel and diming back and forth about 3.85, 3.89. And that is not a significant, it's not a good use of time when we're talking about city budgets, but that's the kind of world that we're living in.
Let's talk a little bit about the relationship between the mayor and city council in budgeting.
Yes.
And I won't ask you to speak for how we do it today because that is, we'll have that conversation with Scott and we'll talk a little bit with him about that. But from your point of view, how do you envision the development of a city budget and the collaboration with the city council?
So interesting. I think that it's important to set, again, sorry, here she goes again, strategic plan with a long-term vision. And when you're trying to do things like create initiatives for first home buyer programs, or you want to, I don't know, do something big for the city, you need the city council to approve it. And I think that as a mayor, you need to be a visionary leader. You need to come up with big ideas and you need to meet the needs of the people. And the city council is the entity that often determines whether or not that's affordable, whether or not they agree and they approve the budget. And so I see the city council as partners. I see them as trying to convince them that certain initiatives that I want to bring forward are helpful to the city. And if they decide that it's not, then I respect that. I think that sometimes in this administration, new things don't get to the city council. They kind of just exist. Like with budgeting, the mayor tells city departments that they're level funded. And so what incentivizes a city department head to say, well, I really wanted a new staff member. There's no incentive. And so nothing gets the city council for the city council to really act on. Just seems like it's very mayor centered. So
That's
I guess I would see it as more of an opportunity. Sorry.
No, I'm sorry to interrupt you. That's a really interesting observation because I guess to me, I inherently thought the process was very much sort of ceremonial of sort of delivering it to, but what sort of your point of view is that it should actually be a much more active development process with the city council.
Yeah, and they're all smart, kind, engaged people. And I think that it's important to give them an opportunity to do some work. And if you look back at minutes 10, 15 years ago, they're setting salaries, they're actively improving things, they're cutting budgets. But here, it doesn't even make it to the city council. And that's just an observation. Okay. And Mr. Galvin would have more information in that regard.
Okay. Let's talk about growth. So we as a city have experienced a lot of growth. I think some of it people love, some of it people hate, all the series of emotions you might expect. Regardless of whether people believe we should or shouldn't have built the things that are in process right now, they are coming. And it will require infrastructure of the city to support those things. What are some of the ways that you plan to sort of think about and make sure that we are ready for the growth that's already in progress? So not even looking forward to what we might do next, what we've got coming right now.
So the infrastructure needs to respond to the growth demands. We need, here she goes, strategic plan. So we know what growth is coming in so the city departments can adequately respond to it. So I'm sitting here chair of the school committee, and I don't think we've ever had a discussion on growth with the city. And we have the west side is going to be developed. And we need to talk about how that's going to impact class sizes in schools. And under my administration, all of those things are going to be part of a plan. We sort of had to go out and get our own feasibility study, and the school committee had to fund its own study on growth because there was no information forthcoming from the city. And so we're going to use that to handle the education piece. And that will give us some really good data. But again, a housing production plan, which is a roadmap in order to develop affordable housing in Woburn, not actually build it, but actually control it and try to guide it to meet the needs of the Woburn people. And that is a key aspect of understanding growth, because then we will have control over it. Obviously, we won't have to deal with adverse 40B issues. We have a housing production plan. And quite frankly, if we have a certified housing production plan, which by the way, ours is expired, that will set us up for grants and opportunities to really like see where we need to develop more housing so people can afford it. And so growth is actually something that the city can be involved in because we need it. In order for Woburn to stay as prosperous as it is, we need growth.
Growth isn't necessarily, I want to paraphrase, but I want you to correct me. Like, yeah. I think what I hear you saying is growth isn't something that happens to us. It's something that can happen with us.
With us, yes.
That sounds like a really bad advertising campaign. I should be ashamed as a marketer to have said those words, but.
And, along with the growth can come ideals around open space, the environment. Like we can shape the vision of Woburn through having a grasp on our growth for the next 10 years. Absolutely.
I think there's a perception, and this isn't just a Woburn perception, but sort of a perception across lots of things that the way to get growth and the way that we have investment coming into it is big projects that, contractors and people who buy land, and certainly those are people who have a lot of money and they do want to do that. I don't think there's any question. But I've often thought, is there also a pool of smaller investors who actually would love, and they can't afford to buy 100 acres and develop it, but they could maybe have a small lot and do something interesting with it?
Yes. So a housing production plan is comprehensive. Inclusionary zoning, accessory dwelling, so allowing folks to build onto their own houses so they can serve their elder relatives. Oh, isn't that an interesting way to solve a housing affordability crisis? Developing home buyer programs, and also just focusing on large projects. Yeah, we want developers to make money. I get it. But we also want little guys or gals to make money, and focusing on variety of different projects instead of one way to do it. But again, without a plan, without a housing production plan, I don't know what's going on. It's, I think we can get a hold of it and just think about the wonderful things that will come out of a housing production plan. We'll understand our poverty levels, our whether or not, our median income for elders and how much rent is. Is that a big problem? I'm guessing it is. And so do we need to think about subsidized elderly housing? How would we know we need to do that without needs assessment?
So let's talk about the needs assessment and the strategic planning process. So tell us how that, just operationally, how do we get to one, right? I don't think there's anybody who's going to say strategic plan bad, right? Like nobody can look anybody in the eye and do that. But I don't think most of us understand how to create one. So step us, I know the school committee has done one, but this would, be a, broader scope clearly.
So a strategic plan will identify Woburn as a whole and all of its challenges. So I'm talking about like the pools, the dog parks, the housing, the development, the environment, and all of the challenges that encompass what what is impacting Woburn right now. And then you sort all of that data out and you tease through it to identify what's rising to the top. 5%. And by the way, how we're going to contact people, that's fun. That's like getting surveys out. That's meeting with, people that have access to marginalized folks like religious leaders. That's, just getting people to come and give us information in the city. And, I have these ideas of like making videos and like,
I like making videos.
Yeah. I don't know, just really taking it and making it positive and making it an experience where people feel heard. So even when someone is communicating with the mayor's office, they're communicating with the mayor's office, and that in itself is creating like a change, an experience of connecting to City Hall. And we tease through the data, and then we make SMART goals. And I envision a team process. I envision a consultant firm that I hope will do this for free. I envision just an exciting process. And then we just tease everything out. We make a plan. This is what we're going to do in 10 years, 5 years, whatever it is.
I love it. I'm a planner. So part of what I do for a living is help companies build strategic plans, not at the same scale, very different constituents than sort of what you're talking about. But I get excited about spreadsheets, yes, planning meetings and workshops and brainstorming and all that stuff. So I'm with you on that for sure. I want to talk about a couple of specific areas of I can't think of the right word, so I'm just going to ask the question. So one of the things that we know about our city is, in general terms, I feel safe in Woburn. I think most people generally feel safe in Woburn. We are a city, but we still have a lot of neighborly feelings. However, we still have significant crime that happens here, and we still have violence that happens here, and we still have all the things that come around with being part of a city. What role does the mayor's office play in helping to support the public safety and community outreach initiatives that the police department and the chief have? They do a lot of things today, and what things can we do moving forward?
So I really appreciate this question. I want to say that I am from a police officer family. My dear uncle was very close to us and was a police officer. So I just want people to know that I have this inherent respect for police officers that may surprise people if they think I have a certain level of politics. But I am 100% pro police officer because I was also a victims' rights attorney. And in that space, I had to work a lot with police officers, and I worked a lot with kids. And I just saw some amazing things that police officers did, particularly detectives, to help kids and families. And it was just inspiring. So I'm coming from that place. I just wanted to start off by saying that. So the mayor, when we think about safety, right, we can think about police officers and we can think about fighting crime, but we really have to start with, what does it mean to be a safe Woburn? We need all of the city departments to be on the same page as to what kind of safety we're trying to produce. That means everything from emotional safety to inclusion, so people feel included in all of the city governments, all the way up to the actual prevention of violent crime. So public safety is a huge umbrella of everything needs to be rowing in the right direction on the boat. When I think about my relationship with the police, I just really want it to be positive. I want it to be very collaborative, and I want it to be respectful. And I think that the chief did identify that there are some shortage of resources. And again, I find this odd that the city council and the chief both agreed that the police needed more resources, but for whatever reason, it was the mayor that didn't agree. And again, I don't know all of the dynamics, but to me, it just seems like he was substituting his judgment for that of the chief of police. And I find that interesting. But going forward, I think that the mayor and the chief need to have a very, very good relationship and need to be a partner in order to promote what it is that we want to see for Woburn safety. And I'm hearing this a lot, that, you know, there could be some need for community-based policing, you know, really making sure we're reaching out to all the constituents, making sure that the police and the public have a trusting relationship, because I think that helps. But I just want to create a better quality of life for the police officers that work for Woburn, so that they're happy that they work for Woburn.
I almost hesitate to follow that discussion with my next question, because I don't want people to associate drug addiction and crime. But you know, it is the next question I'm going to ask you. So, Woburn has seen quite a lot of increased drug addiction. We've seen a lot of challenges. We as a city have done some educational programming that I think is super valuable to help families understand what resources are available, to help educate young people and try and stop it before it starts. But at the end of the day, it still feels like too many people are overdosing, too many people aren't getting the help they need. And we see this in all walks of the city from across. What more should the city be doing to help address what is a American epidemic, right? This isn't specific to Woburn, but right here at home, what can we do to help people who are really struggling with drug addiction and their families?
There is a substance abuse task force. I like that Woburn has one. I would like to see more, may diversify the board, the actual substance abuse task force, to include folks from the school system and folks that are directly working with people. And I think we need to be a little bit more transparent about what actually the impact of substance use in Woburn is, and just identify it as a challenge, identify it as something that is in fact impacting Woburn, and just be very open about the fact that it is here, and we're not going to hide it. We're not going to create more of a stigma around it by pretending it doesn't exist. I think it's really important to bring it out in the open and have open conversations about it. And I think I was part of Lieutenant Jolly's, he's the substance abuse coordinator, and he ran some great programs, and he brought a lot of folks together prior to pandemic world. And I think he does a really good job. I was impressed by his programming. So I would like to see that continue, but maybe add more social services type people into the conversation. And when we talk about substance abuse, of course, we're talking about mental health issues. And during our strategic visioning sessions, we will be able to identify and capture maybe mental health issues or lack thereof in Woburn. And I think that that's a connection to that piece. And, you know, we can do everything from actually recruiting therapists that work with folks that are battling addiction. We can actually recruit them to come work in Woburn, right? We have the right kind of savviness, and we can identify that need, and we can get people to come work here. Additionally, we can just give more information, right? Actually have city-sponsored information and resources for folks that may be going through something. Just make sure that we as a city do not want to make things worse by creating a culture of stigma.
One of the things, I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about businesses. So we've talked a lot about residents and neighbors and such. And one of the beautiful things about where we reside, where Woburn lives, is we're kind of a prime location for businesses of lots of different types, right? We've got these easy highway jumping off points, which creates a little traffic, and we all know that that's miserable. But at the end of the day, it also does bring businesses to us of many kinds. But at the same time, this last year has been hard on a number of businesses. And one of the carryover effects of the pandemic is that I have very few businesses I see don't have job postings, aren't desperately looking for employees. And I've seen restaurants have to close early. I've seen people not be able to expand, all kinds of things that are having, because there's just not people applying for the open positions that are there. Is there anything more that, as mayor, you would do to help support those businesses as they're looking to address a known job gap between people applying and positions getting filled?
This is a top of my head thing, but imagine if there was a way to partner. Well, first we had to figure out, what are the 18 to 22-year-olds doing in Woburn right now? Where are they? Where are they hanging out? What's going on? Is there a way to connect people that have access to that sort of particular population with open positions? And again, we would need to know what's going on. I wonder if the schools could be instrumental in filling some labor issues. In terms of financial support, I know that the city is going to be receiving some ARPA funding, and I don't know if I believe they have to have community meetings to discuss how this money is going to be spent. That might be something to ease the pain of small businesses. But I think when you're talking about specific employment, I bet if I thought about it for 15 minutes, I'd be able to come up with an idea. But if we have a particular workforce that are looking for jobs, and then we have people that are looking for folks to have jobs, I'm just wondering if the city's doing enough to bring those two groups together, just doing the basic work of connecting.
Yeah.
Or maybe just allowing these businesses to advertise in the city, or promoting them and saying, this place is looking for workers.
Yeah, and I think you raise a point. This isn't all something that the city solves, right? We have a Woburn Chamber of Commerce. We have schools that maybe can help, and there are programs within the school that do some job postings and promotion. I know my kids, when they were in the high school, participated in some of those things. And so I think, looking at understanding and seeing how we can do more, and, working with some of the business leaders to understand from their point of view how we can address those concerns. I'm going to ask you to think about, for the moment, let's assume you have won the election and it is your first week in the mayor's office. What does that look like?
So I think there will be a State of the City address, right? Inauguration night. And then after that's done, I think it's time to get to work. I assume that there will be things that need immediate attention, the perhaps legal issues, or something that, just naturally has to pop up and needs immediate attention. And so after I deal with those things, I think it's time to just go around and meet people and just let them know that this is going to be an atmosphere of gratitude, appreciation, collaboration, kindness, and to have, I don't know if people want to meet with me face to face in my office. Maybe I could do something like that, or just leave an open door and allow people to come in. I want to meet with all of my department heads, the department heads that have been working for Woburn for longer than I have, that have specific talents that I certainly can't wait to see what they have to offer me, and just see what's on their minds, and see how I can make their experience better in Woburn and support them. I want to ride along with the police. I want to see what a police officer does, if that's, cool. I just want to make people know that I am available, and I am a nice person, because I think, that's part of it. Who is this person? Is she nice? And just making sure I'm available and ready to build a city that is truly dedicated to improving the quality of life of people, And I'm not in this job for any personal gain. I'm in this job clearly to make people's lives better because I see an opportunity to do good. I want to make sure everyone knows that.
Let's talk about wellness. You're talking about doing well and kindness and a lot of really important attributes there. We have many functions in the city that help support people's wellness. We have the rec department. We have our school systems that do many things. We have the senior center. There's probably a whole bunch I'm not even thinking of that exist across the city in various ways. You might argue part of the library programming perhaps would fall into that category, for example. What's our responsibility as a city for overall wellness? That could be, physical activity, but it could also be a whole bunch of other things that might fall into that category.
Yeah, the city has a very strong responsibility to do what it can to promote wellness. And again, a lot of this, just these, a lot of promoting well-being has nothing to do with actually spending any money. It just has to do with changing the way we talk and changing the way that we prioritize things that already exist. But I can't get over the fact that wellness, people need to walk down their streets, and people need old decrepit buildings to come down, and they need open space to really feel good and well. And as much as I'd like to say, well, I'd love the senior center to have more yoga, I can't ignore the fact that we have cities and streets that need deep repair. And so if people are going to be out and about and visiting people and out of their homes, then we need to make sure that they're safe to do so. And I think that we need to, I think that we're behind. I don't know if we can talk about systematic programming until we're talking about where our people are and how they're doing, and outreaching to people and see where they are.
So I know, and because you have stated before, your family is totally behind you running for mayor. I'm not sure anyone, including you, can be fully prepared for the nights and weekends and phone calls and interruption that being the mayor means, right? It's a hugely time consuming job. We certainly don't pay financial compensation for the time. People don't become mayor to become wealthy by any stretch of the imagination. How are you and your family preparing for that sort of life shift that's likely to come? And what guardrails are you going to put in place to keep you and your family, wellness and staying healthy so that you can serve the city well?
Thank you for asking that. What a nice question. So I'm a 24-hour lady anyways. So, and I have right now I have a very time consuming career that has a lot at stake for my clients. And so I have this kind of life anyways. And it all comes down to believing in what you do. And if you're doing the good stuff and you're living the life according to your own deep principles and your own values, then you work 24 hours a day. That's just how it is. And people know, they know that they email me and I email them right back. And I'm going all the time because I just think it's important as a city official to be available. So I guess we're not really planning to do much. I think that my kids I haven't been around a lot, and they've sacrificed a lot to get me here, and I'm deeply grateful for them for supporting me. But I just happen to have a fantastic family. So thank you for asking that.
I as a person who traveled early in my career, it's hard. It's super hard. The good news is it's local,
Yeah.
right? So that's the wonderful thing about working for the city is at least you're not on an airplane every week or anything like that. So, but I do think it's valuable to just recognize the sacrifice that goes in and the amount of time and commitment that it is, not just for you, but your family and the people that you care deeply about. We are just about out of time, and I want to ask one more thing, and then I want to talk about the community forum that we have going on because I
Sure.
think it's going to be super valuable for people to be able to ask additional questions. Um, so you have talked about having a strategic plan for the city. Clearly, you have a vision for what Woburn can be. Tell us a little bit as we summarize up what your vision for our city is.
Woburn can continue its small town feel with its large city. It truly can. We can leverage the strength of its compassion and its oneness and its connectedness. We can actually create a city that honors its its small town feel, but also growth at the same time. I have no doubt that with a strategic plan, we can bring forth a new city that is based on supporting small businesses and creating beautiful spaces and creating a prosperous city government that responds to people and does what it can to help people. And I just envision like a transparency, a honesty, not to say that anyone is dishonest, but in transparency, an honest assessment of our challenges and ways to address it. And I think it's going to make people a lot happier to live here.
Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing that with me, and thank you for answering my millions of questions. We have a lot more questions than we have time today to ask, and you have been kind enough to create a forum on the
Mhm.
14th, and I'm
Yes,
deeply grateful that you've asked me to help facilitate some of the Q&A. So you, in your full transparency, you're not screening questions yourself. You're
no,
not knowing in advance what they are. This is really a community's opportunity to ask whatever is top of mind for them. And my
yes,
job is just to organize it a little bit. So
yes.
tell us a little bit about that and where people will be able to tune in.
So I feel it's just important that people have. I can't do an in-person event. Well, I right now I'm a little shy to do it because we sometimes we take care of kids in the house and kids can't be vaccinated. So I'm a little concerned about doing an indoor thing. Okay, number one. So I figured an online live back and forth will really give people opportunity to ask me questions that I don't know they're going to ask. And I really want them to see the way that I respond and whether I know the answers and whether or not they agree with me. I just want that live interaction. Um, and you know, it's been said, I said it that Mr. Galvin did not want to participate, but I've kind of gotten over it, and I understand and respect his decision, and so I can't control what that campaign does. I can only give what I can give and be who I am. So, anyways, it's on October 14th, and you can find it on Facebook. And if people want the invite, I guess they can email me, but it's on Zoom, 7:30, October 14th, live Q&A, and you're gracious enough to ask the questions to me, so I don't see them. I just answer.
We're going to let you focus on answering, which is awesome.
Yeah, it's
So
great.
I really hope that people will join us because I think it's a great opportunity to ask whatever you're interested in about. But those folks who aren't able to, or maybe will be shy when they join and just want to listen, feel free to send questions to me at todayinwoburn@gmail.com ahead of time, and I will enter them. I'm not going to put anybody who's asking questions on camera, so don't worry. It'll all be through chat. So there's no, but if people are trying to listen in while they've got, dinner going and, vacuuming and all the other things that happen, they can send questions ahead of time as well, and we'll make sure they get into the queue. Ellen, thank you so much for joining me and for being transparent with voters about your view and vision for the city and your
Thank you.
campaign. Is there anything else you'd like to add before we wrap up?
No, I just think, well, of course I want to add something. I mean, come on. I like to picture Woburn at a little like Woburn voters at a crossroads, right? And they can continue on down one path, or they can merge into a new vision an exciting new future and really feel like things are changing for the better. And I think voters can trust me. I think that they know that I am 100% on their side, and I will fight for them and I will advocate for them, and I'll create a government that just responds to them. And just think it's time for a change. And I think it'll be very exciting. So I hope that they come vote for me.
Thank you for tuning in, Woburn. And as always, please continue to take good care of each other.